I've been waiting 40 years for this. They called themselves Ghostbusters.
If there's something strange, if there's something weird, what are people gonna call?
Good morning, Vietnam!
Greetings and salutations.
Oh, hi, Mark.
All right, I run out of patience.
It's showtime.
Hello and welcome back to In Retrospect. My name is Matt, and as always, I'm joined by Brady. Brady, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How about you, man?
I took a brief trip to New York, and there was like a 5-minute like Frozen Empire. It was kind of weird. Like it wasn't very long, but first time it ever like froze over in July in New York. But it was a wild experience. But I'm here.
Yeah, crazy 20 minutes.
Crazy is might be kind. Dude, I'm curious. So I don't have a lot of feelings toward this. In fact, like I watched the first one for the first time earlier in the week last week, and you know, I didn't expect to love it, like because like I was a little bit afraid of like the whole thing with did I miss the boat? And yeah. I don't know that I missed the boat. I just don't know that the movie works as well in 2024 as it would have worked in 1984 or the 1990s or the early thousands. I just like there's elements of the movie that I thought just did not work in general, and then there's elements of the movie that I thought were really funny and I really vibed with. But like overall, I thought it was just pretty okay.
Yeah. And
so I went into this movie with relatively low expectations just because of the, like some of the, like, obviously I knew some of the other movies, like 2 I didn't hear was great. And then I knew about the one with Melissa McCarthy and Kate McKinnon, yeah. And others, was not great. Afterlife, I heard it was pretty good. So I didn't know what to expect with this one. And ultimately, I feel like it just felt kind of like maybe a shell of what used to be really good.
I just think it's straight up a bad movie.
Okay, so I didn't want to just come out and say that. I don't know that. I don't know that I think it's a bad movie. I know one thing though. I know it's not a good movie. It's not an entertaining movie. You know, I think the worst crime this movie commits is that it's just an edge, like a slither of being undecisive whether it's a good movie or a bad movie, right? And I would almost rather watch a bad movie than watch a movie like teetering on the edge of either one.
It's true, because I feel like for the first maybe half or so, I was like, okay, this is fine. You know, like there's nothing pretty harmless, like nothing horrible's happening, nothing amazing's happened, but it's kind of fun. All these characters, I even like the new characters that showed up in the last movie, but I don't know, it just kind of like hits a point. I don't really know exactly what the point is, but I just kind of felt the energy drain out of me. I kind of like lost my interest pretty quickly.
There's a choice in here that just very much made me dislike this movie. Like it was the single straw that broke the camel's back that ultimately, you know, led me to just not having a great time with this movie. And again, like I want to reiterate, I don't necessarily think this movie's bad or terrible. It's certainly, I don't think it's not even the worst movie that's came out this year, in my opinion. I can name a couple others. I don't think it's particularly good. My experience watching this movie was like, I feel like this is a really good movie if it came out in 2006.
Yeah.
Even if it's like a remake of the original Ghostbusters, I feel like this is a really good movie if it comes out in 2006. The problem is we're about 18 years removed from that. Right? Like,
yeah.
There's a literal moment in this movie where there's a sky beam.
Yes, the moment that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, they did it. They're just doing Skybeam again.
But no, I think there's a really good 2006 movie in here. It's just, I feel like it's 18 years too late.
Yeah. There's a few decent movies crammed into one movie that's less than 2 hours, and it really struggles because it's trying to do way too many things.
I think the thing that ultimately bothered me the absolute most in this movie was they built up a single character that you really bought into that was probably the best part of this movie, and then led them to a singular choice that I don't think that would have happened. That they would have made that choice.
I feel that way about a lot of characters in this movie.
Mine is McKenna Grace. Like, I don't.
Oh yeah, that choice was wow.
So obviously, I haven't watched Afterlife, but I picked up on what that might mean, and so like my interpretation of this character based on this movie alone is that she's way she's way more mature than her age.
Yeah.
I just don't buy the choice they have her make toward the end of this movie.
No. I'll be honest, she feels like a completely different character in this movie than she did in the last one.
And that's
like
odd.
In the last one, yeah, like the last one, she is hilarious. Like, she's the biggest comic relief, in my opinion, of the whole movie. She's like very awkward. She's pretty much a child in the last movie. Like, I feel like she looked much older in this movie, which I know like the last one got delayed because of COVID. So they all look older, like her and Finn both, and the other girl and her friend. But yeah, she just acted. She was super angsty, which I guess I know it's like part of being a teenager, but just like it just felt like they took all of her characterization away and just made her like an angsty teen.
It's almost like they made her the Peter. What's his name? Peter. What's his Vinkman of like the 1984 version, as opposed to making her the what's his name? Yeah. That's the weird part to me. Like they set her up to be Egon's granddaughter, and she makes a choice later on that is very much Peter Vinkman.
Yeah, very Vinkman-y for sure.
Which is the weirdest thing in the world, I think. And I'm not opposed to that twist. I just think it's completely separate characters.
Yeah.
And that once that moment hit, I'm like, once they sat down she sat down in the middle I assume Central Park to play chess that night. And then she starts communicating with the ghost. I'm like, this could be really interesting. Like, she's just going to play very much just opposite, right? And it did not go that route.
No.
And, the further along that relationship developed, the more I was checking out of the movie. And that was the point for me where I was like, I'm done. Like, I can't handle it anymore.
Well, that moment's really odd because they kind of halfway set it up that this girl's going to trick her, and then whenever the scene happens, like, she doesn't even really do anything.
No,
it's just completely this character's choice that has nothing to do with anything she was doing, really.
Let me ask you this: let's mind that a little bit. Do you think there's any part of this movie that's a better? Because like one of the biggest problems I believe this movie has is that it has interesting lore, but it doesn't set it up in a way that it pays off well or that you're interested in, right? So Let me ask you this. The movie starts off with like back in like the early 1900s, late 1800s, something like that in New York. Mm-hmm. And then it goes into that frozen room. Is this a better movie if you're introduced to that girl when she's living with her family and then that thing happens? Cut to black, and then you're introduced to some of the extra lore with Garaka or whatever the heck that character's name is. You see what I'm saying? Is this a better movie if you go that route?
It could be. I definitely wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have any problem if they went that way.
Yeah, this movie really suffers from just having almost just trying a big. It's a much smaller, like, the movie itself is a much smaller movie than the story it's trying to tell.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
It's weird. It's weird how contained it is whenever they set this evil up to be this like this presence to be such this huge thing that's been around for centuries, and then it like all kind of takes place in like one city block pretty much.
And thank God for Patton Oswalt. And also, why is he in this movie? Like,
yeah, dude, like him and Kumail are trying their best to save this movie.
So I want to talk about Kumail, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, one, do you like him in this movie?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We're on the same page here. Have you heard people giving him flack about this movie?
What? He's like the best part of the movie.
So here's my thing. A lot of people are like, from what I've heard, they're pretty much like saying he's overacting. He feels like he does not belong in this movie. And I'm like, I'm fresh off watching Ghostbusters 1984 in 2024. Now, I'm not making this comparison because I believe he's as good as this character, but he 100% is the same character. He's Rick Moranis.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be odd. You're supposed to be like, why is this guy acting the way he's acting?
Yeah. Exactly.
Kumail gave me that. Like, again, I'm not advocating that I think Kumail was fantastic in this, because he was a little. So here's the difference for me between the 1984 and the 2024 movie. And correct me if you feel any different. I feel like 1984 Ghostbusters is written in a way in which it's not a comedy, but it's funny. I feel like this movie is written in a way in which it's a comedy because there's jokes written.
Really, I feel the opposite way.
So what I mean by that, let me expand on that, is that Bill Murray is just naturally funny. He could say something about steak and potatoes and you would probably laugh just because of his line delivery. And I'm not saying that the script was not written to be funny. I'm just saying it wasn't written as jokes.
Okay.
Like, it's not slapstick, right? That's probably a better way to say it. Like, it's more intelligent humor than anything. Mm-hmm. It's more dry humor, very sarcastic. Yeah, I'm not trying to make you laugh. I'm humoring myself more than anything.
It's like a 80s comedy. It's not like modern comedy. Like this one is much more like a modern comedy where it's weird. Like I don't think Ghostbusters works in a modern setting.
You're right.
Maybe that's a big problem, I think. Just like and they don't do themselves any favors with really laying into the nostalgia a lot. Mm-hmm. I think that's very much to their detriment. They're so tied to the past. They don't even really try to, outside of the humor, they don't really try to bring it into the modern day, which makes that humor feel so out of place, I feel like.
Yeah, a couple months ago back, probably about 8 months ago back, we reviewed a movie. And I asked, is this what Indiana Jones feels like in 2023? And I could have been completely wrong about that. But I'm certain about one thing. This is what Ghostbusters feels like in 2024.
Yeah.
Because like it's almost like, because like in the original Ghostbusters, there's absolutely parts of that movie that does not work in 2024. Like there's just elements of that movie that would not be made the same way, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And I think that they tried to, again, be a impression of that movie, but it's dumbed down to a point in which it feels almost like it's very obvious to me they're going after the family as opposed to what I would think at that point in time was like late teen, early like adulthood.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that Ghostbusters as a movie works for a family outing.
Yeah. So you've just seen the original in this one, right?
Correct.
So just kind of like a brief history of Ghostbusters. So like, I'm not a massive Ghostbusters fan, but I enjoy it.
Sure.
The original is just, to me, it just feels like a feature-length SNL sketch, pretty much.
That's fair. Yeah.
Just like guys goofing around, and it's like a comedy about starting a business, pretty much. And then the second one is just like too much of a good thing is a bad thing, kind of, you know, like they just go overboard with the comedy and it kind of just grinds your gears a bit. Then we get the reboot with Melissa McCarthy and them, which they're all like super funny people, but just that movie does not work. I don't really know exactly why, but I mean, there's a lot of humor that works in that movie, but it's just not a very good movie.
Sure.
And then Afterlife is like, I think a lot of people really compare it to like a Force Awakens type thing. And it really is. And it's like, it doesn't feel like Ghostbusters, but it's a good movie. And this one feels like they kind of tried to hit a middle ground, and it just kind of showed how that really doesn't work.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because I thought that's where you were going. But you know what's really interesting is after The Force Awakens, they did something entirely different. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, for the better or for the worse, I think it's for the better. But I think this movie, again, tried to do The Force Awakens. Like, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like, let's go somewhere different too. And it just couldn't marry one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the nostalgia aspect is coming in. Because I don't think it's, again, I don't want to just hop on here and be like nostalgia. Because like it's absolutely an issue in the movie. But I really don't think that it was built that way. I think it's more so that it just feels like, again, like The Force Awakens part 2 for the Ghostbusters specifically. Yeah. I think that's what it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's really weird to me because Ghostbusters just doesn't seem like a franchise that lends itself to like this massive. It doesn't have the same weight to it as like a Star Wars or something like that, and it's like these movies are trying to give it that weight, but it's just not that kind of thing. It's just like a really silly, goofy comedy from the 80s.
So,
you know,
one thing that struck me when these trailers initially released, and again, you have, like, whether or not you're a massive fan of it or not, you have way more understanding of the lore. But one thing that struck me when watching this initial trailer for Frozen Empire, I'm like, this does not feel like Ghostbusters in the sense of like the world that they're expanding into. Like the whole idea of this evil force, the Garaka, whatever he's called, it just does not feel like it fits in the same world. And it's wild because like the 1984 movie is just the wild, like it's literally like what's his name, the pop icon of like the late 60s to the 80s. He starts with a B. He's an actor. He passed away. Just think of the villain from 1984, what that villain looks like, and that's what this guy looks like. I'm blanking on his name. Anyhow, like it feels like that whole ending in that movie. I'll just get to it. It just felt like a joke, like a parody of like an SNL skit more than anything. Yeah. This movie just feels like it's taking it to the Last Jedi serious, and it just can't make the marriage of trying to be the original, be a love letter to the original while progressing the story, because it can't decide, is it going to be, and I hate to call the original ungrounded because of that ending, but that ending in a way in its own like vacuum because of the movie itself feels grounded in like a very strange way. It's not grounded at all, but it feels way more grounded than this one. And I think that's one of the biggest differences.
Yeah, it is. And, we kind of mentioned it earlier that there's just so many things going on in this movie. And I know a big part of that stems from them wanting to, I think it's not a good thing, but they're trying to give the new cast and the old cast like equal amounts of plot and things like that in this movie. But I don't think they need to pick one or the other. I feel like. Yeah, because they're stretching themselves a bit too thin. And I know, like, I was reading that apparently Dan Aykroyd's like written a sequel to this one, where he's like saying that all the old ones are gonna take a step back and kind of make it more for the new cast. And I'm like, well, they should have just done that in this movie, Yeah,
for sure. I think that one thing that really stood out to me about like the juxtaposition of like the new cast and the old cast is I think there's two characters in this movie that really serve somewhat of a purpose of being in this movie. And then there's two other characters that serve the purpose of like just nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very obvious. And of those two characters who somewhat serve a purpose in this movie, they really only have one memorable scene. And it's, the reason they have that memorable scene, it's because it feels like it's the 1984 Ghostbusters again.
Yeah.
And you know exactly what scene I'm talking about, right? The staircase scene. Dan Aykroyd and Winston.
Oh, and Ernie Hudson.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's...
Dude, Aykroyd's really good in this. Like, I mean...
100%.
Well, I don't think it's that great a movie, but for the movie it is. I think he's really good, which he's like... He loves the Ghostbusters, so he's going to give it 100% anytime he gets to be in one of these.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the one thing that specifically Dan Aykroyd and Winston bring is that they're actually like they feel like they're almost borderline Han Solo or The Force Awakens. Like they just 30 years later they just stepped right back in and they were the same exact characters. Especially again in that staircase scene where they're really the only two, in my opinion, of that original cast of the four, or I guess five, that felt like they belonged because they had a purpose in the movie, and then two, like, again, that staircase scene, it felt like you were literally had just progressed 40 years and they were still best friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do like, and I like the role that they've given Winston in this as like kind of the benefactor, like the guy heading up to Ghostbusters. Like it's kind of it's an interesting development for his character, and it makes sense. I feel like even, well, at least their two characters, it makes sense where they're at now.
Sure.
When you kind of look at the originals and then look at this now, like. I really do not understand why Venkman or Bill Murray's even still involved with them, to be honest. Like, he's a doctor. Like, what is he doing? He's like a psychologist.
Murray is channeling his inner Venkman and is, interested in money.
Yeah. Dude, there's a moment in this whenever it's like at the end whenever they're at the firehouse and just randomly he has a pair of sunglasses on
and it's dark. Like it makes no sense.
Where did that come from?
I feel like,
you just put them on.
Dude, it feels like a Ray-Bans commercial.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
He's like, put them on there. Where'd you get those from? He's like, I'm wearing sunglasses in this scene. And they're like, no, that doesn't even make any sense. He's like, I'm wearing sunglasses in the scene.
You got me on set. That's all you can decide. I see. Also, circling back to what I was saying earlier, just so all three of you who are listening don't think I'm dumb. David Bowie, like it made like the villain in that movie made me think of David Bowie, and I think what the the idea or analogy I was trying to present is, even though that was so incredibly supernatural and very much not grounded, the difference between this movie is that was a humanoid that had a face that looked like a human, and this movie channeled way too much Zack Snyder Justice League.
Oof. Yeah, like, I'll be honest, I feel like most of the ghosts in this movie look horrible. Did you feel that way? Like, the big eel one they're chasing in the beginning, like, looks really bad.
So here's I'm of two minds on this. One is like, they intentionally look bad. One, because I think they're trying to, really tap into the nostalgia of it all, but which this would makes sense. Like, this type of nostalgia would make sense. It's almost like making Star Wars, with complete CGI and no practical effects. A moment for the boys. No, to me, like, it's almost like, it's like they couldn't decide how, like, cheesy they wanted to make them, and they couldn't get themselves to commit to making them look 80s cheesy. Again, going back to the Zack Snyder of it all. Like, how does that work? Like, that, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, how do you go from that apparition of that eel thing to whatever that was? Like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And I felt like there's even is it Slimer? Is that what that?
Slimer.
Like, looks incredibly different, but really bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's over textualized. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's weird because, like, sometimes he's a practical effect, but, like, the blending of the two just did not work. Like you said, it's something with the texture of it just was off.
Well,
and something
go ahead.
Something I really noticed, it was very noticeable that none of the actors knew what they were looking at or where the ghost was at many parts in this movie. Like, there's one part where Paul Rudd is, like, looking almost at eye level, and the thing is, like, above, like, way above him.
To quote our generation's philosopher, that's Finn Wolfhard's dialogue, by the way, in the movie.
I thought that was Keanu Reeves.
Also could be our generation's philosopher. Can we talk about how, like, Finn Wolfhard's only in this movie, or Wolfhard, what am I saying? Wolfhard's only in this movie because he was in Afterlife and he's a Stranger Things kid.
Yeah. He really took a back seat in this movie. It was really weird.
Dude, like, so I was hearing someone talk about this the other day. You could legitimately remove Finn Wolfhard's character from this movie. You can remove Slimer. You can remove a good portion of Winston's subplot, like the thing that he's organizing. You can remove... Dude, there's so many things in this movie that you can just straight up remove, and the narrative remains the same.
Yeah.
Like,
I also think it's
go ahead.
Weird, like, characters from the last one, like, oh gosh, what's the girl's name?
Exactly. I can look it up for you. I got you. Keep talking. I got you.
Well, her friend podcast, as he calls himself,
Lucky.
Oh yeah, Lucky and Podcast. What interesting names. She, like, it makes no sense. They're from, like, Oklahoma. What are they doing in New York? Like, she has an internship with the Ghostbusters, and then he's, like, pretending he's at space camp or something, and he comes to help Ray in his shop. Like, it makes no sense.
No, yeah. So even as a person who did not watch Afterlife but knew that it took place in, like, Oklahoma, I was like, how did we get here?
Yeah. Like, I get why the main family's there.
Sure.
But, yeah, I don't know.
And also, again, it's going to be, and also is a lot because there's about 15 billion people in this movie. But, like, the only other part of this movie that I felt sort of worked was Paul Rudd and Carrie Coon. But I feel like it's such an incredible afterthought that the movie forgets that it's even part of, like, that subplot's even part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a shame too, because I mean,
go ahead.
You got Paul Rudd, you got to use them.
Yeah,
and her too. Like, she's a good actress.
I just, dude, they felt like a mom and dad from an 80s movie.
Yeah.
Like, they're there to, it's not like he's not even being the grumpy dad, and he's not even being the happy-go-lucky dad. He's just, he feels like he's presented in such a way, obviously stepdad, I'm sorry. He's presented in such a way that you're supposed to believe that he's a pertinent character in the movie, but they're relegated to, again, just being the stereotypical, you see me for 10 minutes, I'm the mom and dad of the lead character that you like in this movie.
Yeah.
That's the way the movie treats them. Patton Oswalt, and we were talking about this, him earlier. Take him out of the movie, narrative's the same.
Yeah, like Dan Aykroyd could have done all that exposition.
Yeah. It's wild to me the amount of things in this movie that you can just straight up remove, and the movie
Especially
does
in a
not
movie
change.
That, like, feels as stretched thin and bloated as this movie does, just with all the things they're trying to stuff into it.
1000%. Again, I go back to what I said, 20 minutes ago. This movie feels so incredibly massive to be internally so incredibly small.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. The thing that I cannot get over is I don't know how, like, obviously bad movies are made. Like, no one sets out to make a bad movie. It just happens over the course of time, over the course of making something. You just get caught up in the motions. Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know how you watch this post and be like, yeah, we could, like, when in the editing bay, when it's known for cutting things out that just is not pertinent to the story. How you sit there and you edit this with pacing in mind, and you think it's okay. That's the part that I'm confused about.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't get it, because even writing, like, literally Finn Wolfhard's like the only dialogue that you remember from that character in this movie is yeah.
Like, yeah, and I'm 18.
That's it. Like, I just do not get it. Like, this movie just feels like it exists because they made Afterlife a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Something really weird. Okay, so Afterlife was written by the director of this movie and Jason Reitman.
Correct.
And Jason Reitman is Ivan Reitman's son, and Ivan Reitman made the original Ghostbusters. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I thought that movie worked, because he is obviously just like it meant a lot to him. And because he grew up around it while it was being made, and just like it felt so authentic. I felt like, even though it had all that nostalgia bait in it,
Side note,
felt
I'm
much
so sorry.
more authentic than this one. No, go ahead.
I'm sitting on the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire IMDb page. You'll never guess what trailer is playing on top of it. It makes no sense. I'll save you the time. It's Gone Girl. Like, like, what?
What?
It makes no sense. I could not hold the laughter. I'm so confused.
I don't blame you. That's crazy.
Jason
Reitman did the last one.
Yeah.
He's a good director and a good writer, which I get. Well, he co-wrote this one. I don't really know what happened there, but I really wonder why he didn't come back to make this one.
I think I can tell you, brother. There was no story. Like,
he wrote it though. That's what I'm telling. Like,
I almost wonder if he's not a writer in the same way that Ivan Reitman is considered a writer. Like, obviously, this is Ivan Reitman's like progression of the story that he created, but in the same way that Jason Reitman's characters that he developed based on Ivan Reitman's like story, these are his characters. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I maybe that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm spitballing. I could be incredibly wrong. But that's my guess. I don't think there's any Ivan Reitman on this movie. I'm sorry, Jason Reitman.
Yeah. And I got really nervous because one of my most anticipated movies this year, by far, well, I guess might come out this year, is the SNL 1975.
Yeah.
Which Jason's directing and writing. And then whenever I was looking into this movie, this writer is co-writing that movie with him. So it kind of made me a little nervous about that one.
Yeah, I'm looking at Gil Kinnon's director credits. The only
Monster
thing...
House.
City of Ember is what stuck out to me. That's the only thing I remember watching as a kid. I remember liking City of Ember.
On there, wasn't there?
A Boy Called
you
Christmas.
like City of Ember?
I feel like I remember liking that one. It's been it came in 2008. It could be a horrible movie. I was not an intellectual at that time.
That's another case where that book is incredible.
I need to revisit that movie. I forget that movie existed, to be honest.
Let's see, direct. Oh, he directed the Poltergeist remake.
Never watched it.
Me either.
Dude, side note, we don't have to talk about this very much, but another movie came out this weekend.
A good movie.
Yes. Holy crap. No spoilers here, obviously.
Shocked when you said you were going to see that movie.
No, dude, I almost...
Are you lost?
I almost texted you. I'm like, do you thoughts on switching? Because I've been pumped for this movie just for the David Dastmalchian of it all.
Oh, yeah, he's awesome.
Once I heard that he was a lead in this movie, I'm like, and then I found out that, well, here's the other part of the story. I don't know about you, but I'm dumb. I thought that when I watched the trailer initially, it's put together so incredibly well. And I was listening to some press with David talking. I thought this was based on a dang true story. And I was locked in. And I watched the movie and all, and I came on, I was telling Brianna all about it, and I was like, yeah, it's based on a true story. And then I looked it up like 5 minutes later. I'm like, I'm a liar. Like, it's not based on a true story.
Oh man, that's a fun movie. Oh, Late Night with the Devil. I guess we didn't really say what the movie was.
Yeah, I feel like people who are listening to this probably would know, but yeah, dude, it's so enjoyable. Like, I really like. I was talking to Brianna because she hates horror movies. Like, she does not like them. I don't dislike them. I just don't find a lot of enjoyment in them. Like, I like. I mean, you're probably gonna be shocked about this. We haven't talked about it much. I really like The Conjuring a lot. I think that's a really well made movie. I think for me to like transcend into that genre, it has to be something that will pique my interest. It has to be more than just the horror of it all for me to be interested in.
Got you.
And you know, I forgot what movie came out last year that it wasn't Saw. It was something else that I was like, I don't know if I want to go see this one. I almost went and watched Immaculate too.
Was it the Exorcist movie?
Maybe that's what it was. I almost went and watched Immaculate. I might still do it. I haven't decided. But Late Night with the Devil is incredible. I was like really shocked.
Dude, the style is so cool. Like I was really feeling that movie. It's really cool.
100%. Speaking of style, can we talk about this? Like the AI stuff? Like, have you heard about this? Like, your shows, like my Twitter has been blown up, brother. I see. You're a creative. I'm a creative. I don't think either one of us really likes the idea, specifically in your job too. Like, I don't think either one of us likes the idea of AI taking the other's job.
No.
So I totally resonate with that idea. And I'm curious to hear your take on this, but, the problem is, in my opinion, this movie was, put together, like it literally screened last year at South by Southwest.
Yep.
This movie's been in a can. It's an indie movie. It's not like you go to the studio and like, yo, can we remove this? This is not right. Like they did some dumb things. We all did dumb things as kids. Like I don't want you going 13,000 tweets back on my Twitter. Please don't. It's just, I feel like if they remade this movie today, they wouldn't make that same mistake. And I feel and that really irks me, the way people have approached this.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think the thing is, like, probably around the time this movie was being made was whenever we were all goofing around with AI.
Dude.
Like,
I still have them on my phone. Like the
Exactly.
avatars.
it's just like, I mean, and the thing is like they're saying this is taking their jobs, like that it took their no, this was the art department messing around with AI, like at that time that we all were. Like, things are different now. I mean,
Dude,
you got to think about the context.
I went to school being a journalist. Like I have taken journalism classes. Nothing pisses me more off than an article that is just straight up clickbait.
Yeah.
Like, nothing makes me more mad. Because people I don't read.
Mhm.
People read articles. I mean, article titles, I should say. And they accept that as God's gospel. Like, it's just, they could be from The Onion and people won't read where it's from and they just accept it.
Yep.
But no, Late Night with the Devil's incredible. If you haven't watched it, well worth the watch. You know, I think a lot, like, people will probably try to wait for this thing to watch at home, which I kind of get, but I also think it's definitely worth just watching it in a movie theater. Especially,
it's a really fun theater experience. It really is.
I was about to say, especially because it's not a super mainstream movie, so like it's not a completely empty theater, but it's a very interesting experience just watching it with almost a semi-empty theater. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a really, really cool experience.
Yeah, it's a really fun movie.
Speaking of another cool experience, and cool in a different terminology, dude, how is this movie called Frozen Empire?
I don't know. That's such an odd title. You know, like, I think, what was the working title for this movie? It was,
I don't even know.
Because I remember whenever they announced it, it had a different title. It was like Ghostbusters.
Is there any shot they chat GPT'd this name?
The Ghostbusters Firehouse.
I
think
love that.
was the name of it.
That would
Yeah,
have
I
been a
think that was
fantastic
it.
name. Because you know what? 90% of this movie is in that firehouse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the working title for the movie.
I just...
That's what I thought it was going to be called for a long time until the trailer came out.
I don't know how... This just feels like the biggest, like, and I hate saying this, it just feels like a really awful ripoff. Because I think you go into this movie expecting, especially based on the trailers, which is literally just 2 minutes of consecutive scenes that happen an hour and 30 minutes into the film.
Mm-hmm.
I think you go into the movie expecting, like, borderline, like, The Last of Us, like, feel of, like, New York, but it being frozen. And it's very much not that.
Yeah.
It's literally, and I kid you not, we talked about it at the very beginning of this thing. It's 5 minutes. It's the 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes of the 2 minutes that you saw in the trailer. Like, that's not.
Mhm.
Most times when you watch a trailer, it's within the first 20 minutes of the movie. This feels like it was honestly just cut from the movie and posted as a trailer.
No, yeah, because like that trailer, when it shows you, the trailer was, most of it was that scene at the beach with the beach freezing over, and I thought that was going to be like the opening of the movie pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And then it happens, and then I realized like, oh, this movie is like wrapping up. And you just see the beach, and then they're just at the firehouse waiting for the thing to come.
And you know what's the weird thing about it is they're not doing anything really interesting at the firehouse. They literally just stand in that like one like garage.
Yeah.
And that's literally the only thing that it takes place in a singular 4-wall room, which is just very strange. Like, I don't know if it was like budgetary concerns or what, but it just does not feel very threatening.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't, like, again, I don't think this movie is like bad, I guess. It just, I told Brianna earlier, and I kind of mentioned it now, like earlier in this pod, but I feel like I'd almost rather watch a bad movie to have the enjoyment of making fun of a movie. than watching a movie that is just a hair being good enough to not be considered bad.
Yeah, it's just very forgettable. Like I was struggling to remember a lot of it before we hopped on here, and I saw it yesterday. Yeah, I saw it last night. This time yesterday, I was watching this movie.
Hey, guess what? I saw this thing on Thursday. I am I'm trying my best. I think the thing outside of it just being good enough to not be considered bad that annoys me is the McKenna Grace choice in the movie, because it's just so incredibly out of character. You're building this character, and I can only assume same thing with Afterlife, the way they build up this character. They're developing this character so intentionally. The only thing in this movie that you're like, I'm all in on, like, I will watch this movie just to see this arc. Like, she's truly fantastic. And they get to a pivotal point in the movie just for her to make that singular choice of like, yeah, I would like to, become a ghost so I could just hang out with you for a minute. Which is, to me, is completely, it's not even that, like, I don't think that she's wanting the attention of someone or anything. It's that I think inherently in her character, her brain, I think she's too smart to be like, yo, that is dumb. Like, I just don't believe that she like, the thing about her character, she does process things. And I in that moment, she does not process anything. And you're like, well, Matt, guess what? There's a lot of things going on. She's not, like, her family's not helping. Like, they abandoned her. She's young. She's going through other things. She's a teenager. Like, teenagers back then. You've told me this entire time, this hour and a half, like hour and 15 minutes leading up to this moment, and I can only, again, I haven't watched Afterlife, but I only imagine that it's very Egon in that way.
Yeah.
You've told me that this kid is smart and knows what she's doing, and that I can trust her, like, intelligence, only for it to be, I'm going to make the dumbest choice that I possibly can make. And I just don't buy that. I could buy her being tricked. I don't buy her volunteering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also you get that decision, and this whole time they're setting it up like the mayor guy is horrible.
He is.
And then I mean, he is, but then also you're like, by the end of it, you're like, oh, he was kind of right the whole time.
He was.
And then Winston just like pops in there at the end, and he's like, if it weren't for this girl, we would be under 3 feet of ice by now. I'm like, she was the reason you were there to begin with.
Yeah, this movie's too, like, just way too Force Awakens and, like, Scooby-Doo for its own good.
It's you know what? It's Jurassic World Dominion.
Yeah, 100%.
Where it's just like it can't decide which group of people to focus on, and then it's like things just don't make sense because they're having to split everything up.
And the worst thing about that is you don't even get Jeff Goldblum in this movie.
Yeah, you get Bill Murray for showing up on set for one day.
Dude, I'm not convinced he was ever on set with anyone. I just, that was the other thing that really made me mad, is it was so incredibly obvious that, I mean, I don't follow Dan Aykroyd and what's Winston's name?
Ernie Hudson.
I don't follow them, and then obviously Genie. I don't know that they have a lot of opportunities, but it really makes me mad that when even Genie, that I don't think she was necessary in this movie, you could tell she enjoyed being in the movie.
Yeah.
I wasn't convinced that Bill Murray ever was.
No. Me either.
Which I can. Did you watch Roadhouse?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay, so I'm sure you heard a lot of people hate on Conor McGregor. And right, it's, you know, fine, I get it. Like, dude cannot act. I watched it. I enjoyed him because guess what? I think he enjoyed himself.
It's Roadhouse.
Yeah, sure. My point is that I don't care if Bill Murray is quite possibly one of the worst actors, but if he just steps in and he's enjoying being Peter Venkman, I think I would have been okay with it. But it was so incredibly obvious to me that Bill Murray was asked to be a part of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the biggest sins of this movie.
Yeah. Mm.
And then
it's not a very good movie.
I keep trying to say it. It's not bad, but the more I keep talking, the more I'm convincing myself it is. I just think it just tries to be too many different things. I think you hit it on the head earlier. It's about 15 different movies with about 274 cast mates. Like it all, there's parts of this movie that just feels like movie 43 in the sense it's like 53 different storylines. With like 3 different characters in each scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not joking. I wish I was.
No, you're right.
I mean, it's weird because like normally most people when they watch a bad movie, and I think there's been some people who have enjoyed this just for the it feels like Ghostbusters of it all. But it's so weird when there's a bad, like when collectively people agree that a movie is bad, but we can't collectively agree on what's bad about the movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is one of those rare cases.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you gotten that at all?
I think so. I mean, I think the consensus is that people don't like this movie, but I've definitely seen just different people saying they don't like it, but for completely different reasons.
Yeah, which is wild to me. Like, I come out of this movie thinking, dude, if Kumail Nanjiani was not in this movie, like I literally said in my review, like, at least you were interested in what was going to come out of Kumail Nanjiani's mouth. Like, you might not be inherently buy into his character and believe that guy actually exists. The one thing Kumail Nanjiani brought to the table is you were at least interested in what he was going to say. I can't say that for anyone else in this movie. Like, it's just that uninteresting, which is so incredibly sad because, dude, like, going back to what to bring this full circle, when we were talking about when I was talking about the script of the original Ghostbusters and the way that I felt like it wasn't written to be a comedy, it wasn't just intentionally writing slapstick humor and jokes to be read and just said in front of a movie, like a moving in front of a camera. I think the thing that separates it is that one was just written because they had a story in mind they wanted to tell. This one feels like I'm going to make this movie because this other movie exists and we might be able to make some money.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't.
It feels like a cash grab. Like, I mean, that's really all you can. Like, this is one of the prime examples of just a cash grab movie. I mean,
you watched Ghostbusters 2, you watched, what's it, Answer the Call? Was that the name of that one?
And I think so. I think they changed it later to that.
Interesting. And then you watched, obviously, Afterlife. I'm curious, what were the ending of those movies like in comparison to the original? Like, did they feel otherworldly in the same way that this one did?
No, do you care? I mean, Afterlife
I don't care.
has the same. It's the same entity from the first movie.
Interesting. Okay.
Gozer. Yeah. So it's some people kind of complained about that, but I thought it worked.
Sure.
The end one in the 2016 one's pretty ridiculous. It's but not like not like this one where it's like this ancient being thing. It's just kind of like, what in the world is even going on right now?
I don't know. This just felt like it was way too Thor.
Yeah.
It just felt like it exists in a world where there's like a lot of comic book movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Which I know a lot of people have talked about, because there was like cartoon Ghostbusters series that had a lot of like villains like that
Sure.
in it. So a lot of people have been saying this is basically like a feature length episode of that cartoon, which I've never watched a single episode of, so I have no idea. But as someone who just watched the movies, it feels kind of out of place, especially for the movie surrounding it. Like, it doesn't feel like it fits in a comedic setting.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. You brought this up, and that made me think of this question. Obviously, this wouldn't happen because of Afterlife exists. Do you think this is a better movie if it's not tied down to the same canonical, like, present time as like Afterlife, or like the same canon as the previous Ghostbusters?
It might, but that's what the 2016 one did.
Hey, fair.
It was like its own thing. So I really don't know. I mean, like I said earlier, I just don't know how this concept really works all that well in modern day, and they haven't done anything to show me that it will so far.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I liked Afterlife, but even it was like this very rural setting, and it was like even though it was modern day, it didn't feel super modern day because of that. So it worked, but the minute they go back to New York and it's modern day, I'm like, I don't know. Y'all just haven't really shown me how this can work.
Dude, I just had an insane idea. Imagine instead of New York, it's like Japan.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. I think that could be really fun. Anyhow, speaking of Japan, God's... Hey, that's that journalism background kicking in. Godzilla and Kong, something Empire as well. Let me find the actual name of this movie. The New Empire, not the Frozen Empire. Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire.
Ooh,
dude, I already got the tickets. Seeing it on Thursday. Maybe I won't forget. I mean, previous to the hopping on this pod, I mentioned, a little scared. Was it Gareth Edwards? Did he do? No, it was Adam Wingard. It was Adam Wingard, wasn't it? Did he make the last one? Do we remember? Like Godzilla.
Gareth Edwards did.
Yeah,
the first Godzilla in this new thing. Yeah,
and then Adam did do
Wingard.
Godzilla vs. Kong. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got a funky feeling, man. I'm hoping it's good. I really did enjoy Godzilla v Kong. I don't know if... I think there's only... This might suffer from... I'm worried this is going to suffer from like the Man of Steel treatment. I've heard a little bit about like, don't worry, like humans are an afterthought. But I got to thinking, I'm like, is there going to be too much just visual noise?
Yeah.
And I'm a little scared. I'm a little scared. Now, all that being said, dude, I have the first showing on Thursday. I loved Godzilla Kong. I mentioned before the pod that it was the first movie I watched in Dolby Cinema, the first movie I watched after COVID. I'm locked in. I'm ready to go. I'm about to go revisit it actually sometime this week. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of hope. I'm hoping going in with low expectations might be the way. What do you think?
Probably so. It's a cool movie.
What's that?
Kong Skull Island.
Kong Skull. I
Did you ever
haven't
watch
seen
that
that.
one?
I need to. I'll probably watch that
A fun
tomorrow.
movie. That's probably my favorite of this series.
I'll watch it tomorrow.
Fun movie.
Look
Good
it up on
cast.
Lightbox.
Very good cast.
What happened? Is this cast still around, or was this like set a long time ago?
No, it's like set back in the 70s.
I was wondering because it's got like Brie Larson, Tom Hiddleston. Who else is in
Sam
that?
Jackson.
Yeah.
John C. Reilly.
Kong's old, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Makes sense. Tracks. Anywho, we'll do Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire, not the Frozen Empire, the New Empire next. Any last words to close out Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, Brady?
Go see Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah, I'll second that. That's some good last words right there. Anywho, we're out of here. Adios. Goodbye. See you guys next time.